All right, I think we're good. Welcome back to another one of these things where we just kind of talk about whatever comes to mind. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday. Might be able to tell it's getting a little warmer where I'm at. Got a breezy t-shirt, wearing some shorts, but you won't see those. Actually got a window open, so people probably hear me talking outside. You might also hear people talking outside too. Not sure how much this mic picks up. I wouldn't imagine you're hearing that, but sometimes I can hear Heather when she's typing, but she's a very loud typer. Um, but yeah, things have been never. Be very careful how you sleep. Like at night, it's like I don't know what I was doing. Like I know what I can do and why this is exacerbated. I think that's the word. Um, so like when I flip over in my sleep, I like use my head to push up against the pillow and then like use that force to flip over. And that's not good for my neck. And one of these days it was gonna bite me in the butt or the back or the lower neck, and it certainly did this weekend. Um, wow, talk about like it was like normal, like you have like a stiff neck, and it's like, man, I just can't look around like at all very much, and like this kind of stinks. And then I was walking Rose, and it was just like suddenly just something like shifted. I could feel it, and it's like, oh, that's not good. And then I just could not move my neck like at all without just excruciating pain. And I came back inside, and the first thing I did was lay down thinking that could help. And bad idea. Like it was really hard to breathe, and now I like couldn't get up. Like my body was actively telling me, it's like, don't move. Like we are going to try making your arms not move right now. So just don't. Really weird moments. Really weird. Much better now, thankfully. A lot of like a massager that we like just randomly were gifted from Heather's parents like a few weeks ago. We were just gonna toss it, and it's come in handy. So I don't know. Maybe this is its one use. I certainly don't want to like hold on to something for a really long time because it helped out that one time, and maybe it will in the future. But who knows? Anyway, you might notice I'm actually looking around okay. Only direction that is still healing is up. Down's okay. Left, right. I could feel a little bit of stiffness toward the end of that, but the range of motion is great. Like Saturday was like, that was it. I couldn't do anything else. Nuts. Just totally like public service announcement. Don't flip yourself over with your neck. A lot of muscles in your body are a lot stronger than you anticipate, but you don't want to mess with them if you don't have to. Use your arms like a smart person. Don't be like me and flip yourself with your neck. Terrible idea. Terrible. Anyway, not what I wanted to talk about. One of the things that was coming to mind, I can't remember when I was talking about this before, but I think I was having, was it like a one-on-one with uh, one of my, uh, one of my teammates at work, or one of the people who reports to me at work. And we were talking about how people learn and how approaching a younger generation of people, or in our case developers, is something we should be mindful of, but also be aware that they're probably going to be smarter than us at some point, that they're just going to learn a lot better than we learn. And like as we were talking about that, I came upon this like kind of, and it's not the first time I've thought about it, but it's really just like how an education system works. Like when we think about how an education system works, when you're in it, you're just sort of like, okay, so the reason we're doing this is just so I can learn things. And there are a lot of things that we need to learn just to collectively be okay as a species. Generally learning how to talk with each other, generally learning how to write so we can write or type at each other and respectively read the things that were written. Some fundamental knowledge of math, since we decide to live in this world where trading things is very important, and you need to have a certain number of things to have any real value in the world. Sans that, we don't really need to know it for physics, but we also need to learn how to count for our own well-being. And probably just basics in science, like just understanding like how things work, so we're not scared when things happen. Like, if we all never collectively understood that rain was okay, then I'm sure we'd all be freaking out every time it rained because, oh my goodness, the sky is falling. And we didn't need an education system for that. Just mimetic memory, or mimetic inheritance, kind of. Instead of like a genetic one, it's we all have these shared experiences as a species, and we all collectively know these as we progress through our species. It's one of those things that we just sort of know. Kind of like how most animals these days know that you don't really trust humans, especially ones that are standing, and any of them that are holding a gun. Animals know this. They know when we're at our most aggressive, basically, toward them. They know when to be alert. And humans have that too. We're no exception. So, like, we have this system and you're in it and you're like, okay, so I'm just learning the things that we know we need to know. But one of the things that we don't maybe always recognize is that that system is constantly changing. So, like, it was probably a realization that I had when talking with, I was like at some family party, not this year, but or last year. It was like several years ago, and we were all sitting on the porch, and I was like with a few of my aunts and my grandparents and a few of my cousins, and it might have like sparked because of people like just making fun of like Common Core math and how that's taught these days. But one of the things that like I had like brought up is just, like, things change a lot, like when it comes to what you learn in school, what your education system teaches you. And the thing that I was citing was asking my grandparents, did they teach you evolution in school? And that was one of the things that they were like, no, we didn't learn that. And my aunts were like, it was like kind of touched upon. And by the time we got to like all of our me and my cousins, we were like, yes. And that's just the facts these days. That's what happened. And over time, like, these ideas change because humans' understanding of the world changes. So we all have to learn these things faster and younger than previous generations did. And honestly, that's how you know a system works, because you don't want like future generations, the ones after you, to have to learn everything at the same rate you did. That you don't need them to learn the things that have changed, like, necessarily. It's good to know, like, this is what we thought about it recently until now, and we know this is the thing. But all of us outside of that system, we need to depend on current events and listening to other people. We're not in a system that's just constantly throwing things at us to remember and learn. But they are. And this system is going to change so that they learn those things faster than you did. Because if the first time they realized, like, I don't know, that the Earth rotates around the sun. The first time that they learned that was when they were 35, but everyone knows this is true now. Why don't you know that when you're 10 or 5? And that's where we're at. Things that were revolutionary at the time, and people didn't know that stuff until they were like 40, and then didn't realize this until they were 30, or people like just still thinking about it until their 20s. Just everybody just flat out knows it. They know it when they're like 5. They know it when they've watched an episode of Blue's Clues that shows like how the solar system works. And that's, frankly, an education system that works. Like, when I'm working with people who are younger than me, it might be pretty easy to be like, you should probably listen to me because I've been around the block and I know some things. And there's some truth in that, but it's not around facts or how people learn something. Like, sometimes it might be fact related. It's like, I know this thing, you don't know this thing, so I'm going to share this thought with you, and you'll learn it, and we'll all have gotten a little bit smarter because of this engagement. But the main thing you're learning from that experience is, well, experience. That the thing that they're not going to learn is just how you learned it, or a lesson you learned if you're thinking about it in a way beyond the fact. Taking things a little bit further and talking about what people are talking about now. The open questions that people are still asking, kind of thing. But for those things that are basically just universal knowns now, we have systems in place that make sure that our younger generations know this stuff as soon as possible. And by the time they talk to you about it, you're going to be like, well, that doesn't make sense. That's not what I learned. And to be fair, that's how a lot of adults I talked to growing up were. It was, well, no, that's not the case. What are they teaching you in these schools? No, that sounds stupid. That's not the right thing. That's not the right way to think about it. And I think like having come across that, or having to engage with people like that as I grew up, it made me realize that's not how I want to engage with other people who are growing up too. And that carried well into my management philosophy, which is like, what got you here, the systems we have in place, if they are working, you're probably going to know everything I know at least 5 years earlier than I did, just by virtue of a system working. And that's like, I could go out of my way to learn something sooner than a system would allow. That's certainly a thing. But just at a baseline, it's, if I wasn't looking to learn that and I just learned it over the course of my time in that system, then I will likely have learned something later than the person I'm talking to is. In my case, I'm talking with somebody roughly 15 years younger than me. 10 to 15 years younger than me. Is that true? Gosh, I'm old. Okay. I'm just like blowing my own mind here. Yeah, 10 to 15 years younger than me. Then he probably learned a lot of things that I would have learned, that I learned like when I was 20, when he was 17. And that's just because that's how the system works. That's how a good system works. You want the people coming after you to always be improving, to always be a little bit better than what came before them. And that's not to discredit this concept of like wisdom, your experience through life. You're going to learn a lot of things that you can pass down, and all of that has value. But there are going to be things that you just have to be open to the fact that somebody younger than you knows something that you already know, and they're a ton younger than you, because we built it that way. That's how education works. It sort of made me step back a little bit and wonder why we do so much. And I guess it's just it's an effect of being a part of the system, but not like being a part of the system after you leave. So after you leave the education system, there is no really like alumni society kind of thing like you would in a university, where you keep all that network that you built up, or you have that college network with you. Like when you leave the normal like K through 12 system, you're not keeping a network there or anything. You're not still doing projects to keep up with things as you leave. You're just done. But when you're in there, there's like, you should learn from school. But we also, when I was in it at least, there was always this mentality of, you should go interview people who are older than you. Like you should go ask your grandparents what it was like living through World War II or the Great Depression if they were around that long ago. And there's a lot of value in learning a little bit about history and how people just experience the world, like going through that. And it'd be kind of neat if there were, if more people were willing to ask down the line as much as they ask up the line. Like, if I have a question about that kind of thing, it's because I didn't live through that time. And I'm like, I remember doing this too for like an English like project that I had to do. I ended up talking about some kind of World War II thing and interviewed my grandparents and took a video of it and things like that. And like I would interview them about kind of like what life was like, what work life was like, what were you doing for fun to take your mind off things, what was school like for you growing up, things like that. And it's easier for us to think that we need to ask that because we didn't live through it. But I understand, like, when you're older and you're still alive and you're able to talk to people, you're living through the thing that this younger generation is living through. You're probably less inclined to think you need to ask about what their experience is like because you're already living that experience. It's not something you don't know and feel like you need to jump out there and ask about. You can roughly estimate, or so you think. what their experience is like because you're living through that time too. Except when you're younger, everything is just way more impactful on you. You're not at the point where you're just sort of working and that's it for the rest of your existence, as sad as that sounds these days. But their experience, just being a young, impressionable person, still going through this system of learning during this time, is just inherently a different experience than you as somebody who has completed this system and has left it, are experiencing it with what you know. You have a lot more experience with the world, and you're not in the midst of learning everything while you're experiencing this stuff. And that, thinking about those differences, the difference of living in a certain time and growing up and learning in a certain time, made me think that, or made me question, why don't we ask down more often? Like that question that I brought up about, did everyone here learn evolution in school? It's probably one of the first times that my grandparents were like, the curriculum has changed, hasn't it? And they probably got a little bit of that when their kids, my mom and her sisters, went through school. They'd help them out with homework, I'm sure. But you get past that generation, and it's just that like very tangential relationship with what the curriculum is. And then you just don't know anymore. To the point where you're kind of making fun of it because it's not what you did, and it's got to be wrong because it's not what you did. And that can't be the way we think about the system, because we need it to work for the people who come after us to be smarter, faster, so that they can make this world a better place with the time that we have left here. That's a decent last sentence. Yeah, something to think about. Education systems, how they work, and asking up and down that chain. The people who have graduated, asking about the experience, what it's like to grow in it, and the people who are growing in it, asking what times before were like. Just as understanding an experience that somebody has lived already is valuable, understanding that experience now is likely just as valuable. It's more than likely. It's definitely just as valuable. Anyway, I think we'll call it at that. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday. It is still rather Monday. And we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.